scrolling through a Discord server last night. Big Web3 project. I'm talking thousands and thousands of Discord members, messages flying, campaigns everywhere, constant notifications. It looked alive. I mean, if you see, oh, yeah, this is an active community, the members are engaging and all of that. So I decided to do a little experiment. I scrolled back 3 months, back to when they ran their last major airdrop campaign. I found the announcement channel, thousands of reactions, hundreds of comments, pure chaos. Then I went back to check the general chat from that same week. It was completely dead, like crickets. The only conversation happening was people asking when I drop and posting wallet addresses and only engaging on their content because, yes, they wanted to be the beneficiary of the airdrop. For privacy purposes, I'm not going to be mentioning the project. Fast forward to now, 3 months later, no active campaign. And guess what? Same vibe. The announcement channels are still popping when there is something to claim. But everything else, ghost town. And this team, they genuinely believe they have a strong community because their Discord is active. People show up, campaigns get completed. There's always something happening. But here's the question that actually matters. If you remove the incentives, does the activity stay? Because activity and community are not the same thing. And most teams don't realize that until it's too late. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Web3 Quick Bites. I'm Olabisi, and today's episode, I want to talk about something that gets misunderstood constantly in Web3 community. Not the romanticized version we post about on Twitter. Nope, the actual reality of it. Because a lot of teams think they've built a community when what they've actually built is activity. And those two things, they behave very differently when the incentives dry up. So, to kickstart this episode, I am going to be breaking it down in different sections. And so we'll start with the first section, which is what activity really looks like and why it feels like winning. You see, activity is incredibly easy to create. You run a campaign, you launch some quests, you offer points, tokens, NFTs, whatever. You give people a reason to show up, and they do. Of course, they will show up. They join your community, your Discord or your Telegram, they follow your Twitter, they complete your task, they mint your NFT, they claim your airdrop. From the outside, it looks like momentum, it looks like traction, it looks like people actually care. And to be fair, in that moment, they probably do care, but they care about the reward, not the project. The problem with activity is that it's tied to a moment. It's driven by something temporary, a campaign, a launch, a token event. And when that moment passes, the activity fades with it. But most teams don't notice this at first because they are too busy celebrating the spike. Oh, yeah, we just hit 50K members on our Telegram. We just hit 10,000 members on our Discord. Great, cool. Congratulations. The question here is how many of them are actually talking to each other? That's a food for thought. I mean, you don't have to answer right now, but I want you to ask yourself if you're a founder listening to this, if you're a community manager, a moderator, how many of your community members are actually talking to each other? I'm going to let that sink in. We move on to the second section because I said I'm going to break this down into sections for us to be able to grasp and understand this. The second section will be what community actually is and why it is harder to build. Community is different. Community is not built on campaigns. It is not manufactured through incentives either. Community is built on something much quieter and much stronger, which is shared beliefs. A real community happens when people stay not because they are rewarded, but because they see value in being there. They understand what you're building, they are aligned with the mission, they want to see it succeed. And you can see the difference in behavior. People in a real community, they come back without being prompted. They come back without being sold the idea of incentives. They have conversations that are not task driven. They help new users figure things out. And not because there's a bounty, but because they want the community to grow. They explain your product to their friends. They defend you when someone tries to trash you on socials, Twitter, for example. They give you feedback that's honest and not performative. It is quieter than activity. Community doesn't spike on dashboards, but you know one thing that it does? It lasts longer. Way, way, way longer. And there's something that I think we should talk about and we should know, which is where teams get this completely wrong. The confusion usually comes, or should I say, almost always comes from how teams measure success. They look at message volume in Discord, they look at campaign participation, they look at short term engagement spikes during launches, and they assume that means the community is strong. But those signals don't tell you why people are there. They just tell you that people showed up. And showing up is not the same as staying. Are people there because they care about what you're building? Or are they there because there's something to gain? If you don't know the answer to that question, and most teams don't, then it's incredibly easy to mistake activity for community. See, I personally see projects with loads of community members with zero actual community. I've also seen projects with less than 1,000 people who would ride or die for them. So I want you to ask yourself, guess out of these communities survives the bear market? I'm sure the answer is crystal clear. Now, after saying all this, we should actually ask ourselves that, okay, what happens when the incentives stop? This is the moment of reckoning. If you've been listening to my podcast, if you've been catching up on my previous episodes, you will know that I am all for not incentivizing your community members in the early stages because it is bound to fail. Because when your incentive stops, this is where the illusion breaks. Because when the rewards slow down, when the campaigns end, when the market shift, and suddenly there's no airdrop on the horizon, activity drops faster than you can name it. And teams start to panic. They start asking, oh, where did everyone go? We had 80,000 people last month. But the better question, the one that actually matters is this, that we need to start asking ourselves, that community managers, founders, builders, project owners need to start asking themselves is, why were they here in the first place? Because if people were only there for the incentives, they didn't leave your community, they left your campaign. There is a huge difference. And here is the brutal part. You can't fix this by running another campaign. You can't incentivize your way into loyalty because the second you stop paying them to be there, they are gone again. And that is not community, that is payroll. We need to start thinking about why this actually matters for retention. See, this connects directly to the retention conversation we had a couple of episodes back. You cannot retain users who were never actually connected to begin with. If people do not understand what you're building, if they don't feel aligned with the mission, if they don't find value beyond the rewards, they will not stay. And that is on the loudest period. No amount of new campaigns will change that because campaigns bring activity, they don't build connection. Retention is not about keeping people busy, it's about sustaining that connection. And connection only happens when people actually care about what you're doing, not what you are giving them. I'm going to repeat that again. Connection only happens when people actually care about what you're doing and not what you are giving them. So, for some of us who don't know what real community actually looks like in practice, I am going to paint a picture for you. Real community is less flashy than activity, but it is way easier to recognize once you know what to look for. It looks like people showing up on a random Tuesday when nothing is happening. No announcement, no campaign, just vibing in the chats or having real conversations about the product. It looks like users helping new users without being asked. Someone asks a basic question and three people jump in to answer it. Not because there's a community moderator role they are gunning for, but because they genuinely want that person to succeed. It looks like feedback that is not tied to rewards, yeah? People telling you what's broken, what's confusing, what could be better, because they want the product to improve, not because there's a bounty attached. See, community is slower to build, and that is the honest truth. It doesn't make for a great suite, but over time, it becomes one of the strongest drivers of growth you can have because real community is compounding. Every person who genuinely cares brings in someone else who cares. And that, my friend, is organic, sustainable growth. Activity doesn't just compound, it just spikes and dies. So, if you're listening to this and you're currently building or marketing a Web3 project right now, this is the question worth sitting with. Do you have a community or do you have activity? Because one will stay when the incentives stop, the other won't. And in the long run, that difference is everything. This is Web3 Quick Bite, guys. I'm Olabisi, and I'll see you in the next episode.